Very good morning to everyone. You're welcome to the Youth Ideathon 2021. My name is Ben Mwine. I'm going to be guiding our proceedings for today. I am a broadcaster as well as an event manager and marketing and communications consultant, but I also happen to be connected to Nase personally because I know the people who have been putting the Ideathon together for a very long time, for more than 30 years, and I can vouch for them that they have very good intentions at heart and are doing the right things. Over the next few days, we'll be doing a bunch of sessions that sort of help guide Ugandan youth to try and figure out how to solve the biggest challenges that we have. I want to say a big thank you to the United Nations Development Program who have made this possible. And of course, panelists who I'll be introducing in just a little bit. But as we start, of course, I wanted to find out where everyone is. I know we already have quite a number of people on the call and we'll probably be joined by even more. But if you could just start by telling us where you are in the world or in Uganda by typing in the chat for just a moment, so we can, sort of make mention of you and maybe brag about being international. You know how these things are recorded, you can say, you're welcome to the International Ideathon, right? So please do type in the chat room, where are you? If you're in Uganda, which part of Uganda are you? If you're in the diaspora, where are you? Stephen, where Alois in Bugolobi, Chihika, you're in Kampala, where in Kampala? It will be good to know. Is it in Kololo or Nansana? That makes a huge difference, Timothy Mnunuzi, Rita is in Bukoto. Good to see you. Rachel, you're in Ubunga. Derek, you're in Nalia. Good morning. Thanks a lot for joining us. Good to see you, Isaac, in Wandege as well. Someone in Somalia. It's good to see you too. Martha is in Mbweru. Someone in Butabika. I should crack a joke about Butabika. I hosted some people on my show last weekend from Butabika, and every time that word is mentioned, we get very negative thoughts. So forgive me for thinking that even right now. Hope you're well in Butabika. I'm sure in the general area, of course. Nankunda Gerald in Mitoma, that's all the way near Rukunjiri. Good to see you. Fiona in Gayaza, Simon in Matuga. Jonathan, you're in the refugee settlement in Changwali. Wow, that's amazing. That's the exact kind of person that we should be having here on the Ideathon, Doreen Maremo as well. Right, of course, we'll be interacting and getting to know one another over the course of the interactions as we, talk to one another. Oscar and Ginger, good to see you. In the interest of time, what's going to happen now, I'm going to hand over to Dennis Aguma, who is the founder and CEO at Nase. He's going to give an overview generally of what the Ideathon is about, what we're trying to achieve, and what you can hope to expect over the next few days and weeks. And then after that, we'll get into a panel discussion with some very, very distinguished panel members. You'll be blown away by the people that have been put together. And their job is simply, one, to give us some wisdom, some insight, but also importantly for those of us who are on the call, to inspire us to be able to come and get into the space and make changes that we need to. The other question that I need to ask, of course, for the benefit of the Ideathon, I know we have called it the Youth Ideathon, but it's a little secret, a little, very well-known secret that it's actually open to everybody, because in Uganda, well, you can be 85 years old and a youth. If you know, you know. So if you don't mind, again, by typing in the chat room for just a moment, how old you are, would like to sort of try and take stock of how many of us we have on the call. I know that we do have at least one 70-year-old or thereabouts. So the average age obviously goes up by a bit. Augustine, 25, Gerald, 22, 24. That's brilliant. That's exactly the sort of person that we're talking about. Personally, I'm 41, turning 42 this year. So by Ugandan standards, considered a dinosaur. Mary, 27, Oscar, 23, Kagame, you're 26, right? 24. The basic idea is that you guys who are in sort of the generation that is coming up behind us are the ones that are responsible for making sure that Uganda becomes a better country. Only you are going to be able to fix that. And you are in the perfect place right now at 20 to 25. You're just finishing the university. and getting ready to, get on with your life. So how do you do that? By adding solutions to the challenges that we have, instead of bickering and mourning about our problems like most Ugandans normally do. That's what we're trying to do with the Ideathon. So without any further ado, please welcome with me Dennis Aguma, who is founder and CEO at Nase, to talk us through what you can expect to experience with the Ideathon. Over to you, Dennis.
Thank you very much, Ben. I think I also categorize myself as one of the dinosaurs, given the my age tends to change. My categorization of whether I'm a youth or not tends to change. When I'm in Uganda, I'm a dinosaur. When I'm, let's say, in the UK, I'm actually relatively young. But this is for the youth out there. And as Ben has introduced, my name is Dennis Aguma. I'll just be giving very few brief remarks about the Youth Ideathon. What is NACE? People keep asking us this question often. We are the Association of Student Enterprises. We were registered in 2015 with support from Kingston University in London. We've since been supported by institutions like the University of Surrey, Anglia Ruskin University, and most recently Birmingham City University, where I'm also a lecturer and doing a PhD in entrepreneurship. Our focus mainly is working with young people, traditionally in vocational colleges and higher education institutions, with a view of making them entrepreneurial. And one of the things perhaps I wanted to focus on is there's a lot of effort by very many well-meaning partners to solve this Uganda's youth unemployment challenge. But the vast majority of that effort is outside of schools, outside of colleges. Essentially, we are firefighting a problem that we ought to have resolved or sorted out before these young people leave universities and schools. Just to give you an example of one of the projects we've worked on with Makerere University, and even Makerere University Business School, actually, but Makerere University COBAMS, the College of Business and Management Studies, working with just one college, just second-year students that are studying entrepreneurship. Instead of them being taught about entrepreneurship, we are now teaching them for entrepreneurship. So working with the lecturers there, they come up with a business idea and they actually go out there, come up with a product and service and exhibit it at what we call an expo. So they're not just studying theoretical entrepreneurship, they're actually coming up with products and services. Just before lockdown, we had over 1,300 students exhibiting their ideas. Imagine this is just one college, 1 year, one academic year in one college. Imagine if we were doing this, I don't know how many colleges Makerere University has, but if we were doing this on all the colleges at Makerere University, and not just Makerere University, imagine if we were doing this across all universities. I think there's about 50 of them, just before these young people leave the world of work. And the kind of skills that we're talking about, entrepreneurship skills, are lifelong changing skills. They are skills that employers are actually looking for. Luckily on the panel we have not just medical experts, but real entrepreneurs themselves. And they will tell you these are the skills that people are looking for. Innovation and creativity, being action-oriented, people being able to take risks and things like that. So we are on a mission to leverage the power of entrepreneurship in order to achieve social economic transformation. Quite a number of things that we do. Maybe I'll just skip through this, but we do a lot of project and program design, analysis, supporting startups for growth, mainly working through universities. We also support enterprise hubs and enterprise societies. We're actually on a mission to make sure that every university and college has an enterprise society, doing the kind of things I talked about earlier. So what is the Youth Ideathon? We were engaged by the United Nations Development Program to implement the Youth Ideathon. I happen to have been a judge on one of their programs where they give over 10,000 to 40,000 US dollars worth of grants. And usually those grants are meant for businesses that are in existence, maybe 1 year old already, registered perhaps with a bank account. But the vast majority of our Ugandans are not in that category, especially the youth who are just trying things out. Uganda is known to be the most entrepreneurial country in the world, but what that record measures, it measures total early entrepreneurial activity, things like the Youth Ideathon. So if you're supporting organizations and individuals that are already established, the vast majority of the people would have been missed out. So the youth, the UNDP engaged us to rally young people who are not in the category that I mentioned earlier of 12 months and above, but to inspire people to come up with business ideas, especially now that we're in COVID and lockdown. It is obvious that the only way out of this, because there doesn't seem to be too much support for business and enterprise out there, similar to what Dr. Ian Clark might attest to in the Western world. We have to be in it for ourselves. But with support from the UNDP, young people are now being rallied across the whole country to come up with solutions and business ideas to create jobs for themselves. So what have we achieved so far? Working with a very minimum budget, we have successfully executed a media campaign that has been run over 42 radio stations and 10 TV stations. As a result, we've attracted over 2,588 youths. And that number, we've been watching it go up very, very steadily. Initially, we set out to attract 1,000 ideas from all regions of Uganda. Indeed, our hashtag was 1,000 ideas, 100 businesses, 100 million shillings. But we've been blown away by the hunger of the youth out there. And to say we're delighted or excited is an understatement. So we're working with the UNDP to see how we pivot so that almost everyone who has participated and registered their business idea doesn't fall short, even though they're not part of the 100 ideas. In fact, that number is likely to change. So people should take heart, however many you are, or if you don't actually make the 100, that number is likely to be increased because the ideas that we're looking at are incredible for young people. We've been blown away by some of the ideas that we're looking at. So very excited. Working with Hostelite, we've managed to set up a robust data and grant management system where people who are concerned about their ideas being safe, you can rest assured that they're safe with us. In the back end, there's sections for judges to go in, and they probably won't even know who your name is. It's very safe and secure. Your ideas are safe with us. In fact, we're also working with ILA, and ILA is also one of the organizations that is helping us with the intellectual property. So every idea that has been submitted is going to be vetted for potential intellectual property that needs to be protected. So participants should rest assured that your ideas are safe with us. One of the things we're doing as well, we're catering for disabled participants. I'm not sure whether participants can see on the screen, we actually have a sign language person. So if you're disabled, or if you know anyone who's signing on and is a bit is disabled, please alert them to, I think, yeah, Dorothy, yes, I can see you, Dorothy, is interpreting from sign language. So it's not just myself or the panelists, there is a sign language expert who's going to make sure that you don't miss out. We have also set up partnerships with over 9 players in this space, some of whom are very well known. Makerere Innovation Incubation Center being one of them. We've worked with them a lot over the last few years, mainly when we do run the LEAP conference. Most of our student participants end up being incubated by Makerere Innovation Incubation Center. These sessions are being organized by our partners at TESA Advisory Services. You would have seen Paula Mugisa online. Penda Capital are helping us a lot with the grant management system side of things. So we are really deploying an ecosystem approach to the Youth Ideathon. Perhaps some of the viewers and anyone who logs on might find some of these statistics very interesting. Slide on the left is about the participants that we're seeing, how many are males and how many are females. As a researcher in entrepreneurship, I can tell you that all the data in Uganda suggests that our sisters and mothers are more entrepreneurial than our men. Yet somehow the male participants far outweigh the female participants. So this is a rallying call, and I don't know whether the likes of Philippa could please shout off on the top of their roofs. We want as many of these young girls and women applying. I don't know what's happened on this particular one, but we've made every effort to engage influencers, most of whom are female, to try to reach out to these young women, but we don't know where. We've been baffled by this data, and has been very consistent since our launch. Perhaps the other statistic that we think is very interesting is applications by students who are in school and those out of school. Until last week, I think they were almost at the same level, but we now see that there are more in-school applicants. These are students And we wondered whether it is because maybe they're at home doing nothing. But whatever the situation is, most young people who are in schools have a hunger for enterprise and entrepreneurship. And we hope that our development partner, the United Nations Development Program, can take advantage of this data to kind of explore some of the solutions we have for this particular cohort. As I mentioned earlier, some of the things we do with the likes of Makerere University Business School, and a few others, including Kabale University. Then the other interesting statistics are registrations by region. This information is very helpful for our panelists so that they're able to know who the audience is. The vast majority of the applicants are from the central region, perhaps not surprising, but of course, you could be from the central region when you're like myself, Dennis Aguma, a humble boy from Kabale, but needless to say, the vast majority are from the center. Then you have Western, Eastern, Northern. Again, this has baffled us as well. There seems to be less and less participation from the Northern Uganda. We've done everything to make sure that we bring more and we reach out to more applicants from the northern part of Uganda, North and Northwestern. But it's very disappointing looking at these statistics. Yet we know from our data that actually the northern part of Uganda is equally very entrepreneurial. The other one is registration by sector. You will notice that agriculture, which is the backbone of our country, is still the highest in terms of applications that we've received. STEM and the creatives industry are also up there, manufacturing, urban and smart cities. We still have a few ideas around mining and renewable energy, but needless to say, the vast majority of young people listening in today will have submitted more than one idea, which we thought was actually fantastic and brilliant. So there's no shortage for creativity and innovation by our young people. They are going for it, and we're very excited about these statistics and figures. I promised that I'll be a bit short, so I just wanted to thank not just my colleagues who have been doing all the heavy work. The Ideathon has been about 6 months in the making. Actually, probably much longer than that. We have had to pivot countless times because of the uncertain situation out there with COVID now, but we're looking at it as an opportunity. But I know that my colleagues have been doing a lot of work in the background, so I'd like to take this opportunity to thank them. Jimmy, Ivy, Brenda, Buire, Manana, everyone that has been supporting us all this time, I would like to thank you personally. To our distinguished panelists, we are indebted to your sparing your time this morning, and I'm personally looking forward to your thoughts and ideas around the healthcare. The healthcare space is one of those that has huge opportunities, especially now with the pandemic, opportunities for innovation and creativity and entrepreneurship. But often our young people don't take the healthcare as an opportunity for enterprise and entrepreneurship. But I'm delighted that the panel that we have hopefully will help illuminate that. To our support partners, I would like to thank you very much. Most of these are support partners who are doing this pro bono, so we really are grateful. I can't go through them all, but I would like to thank the Innovation Village, Makerere Innovation Incubation Center, TESA Advisory, StartHub, Innovent Labs, Penda Capital, Celeste Media, and the Youth for Business at the UNDP. And of course, the UNDP Accelerator Lab team, Bana, Hadija, Innocent, everyone. I can't finish you. I can't exhaust Deborah. I can't exhaust all your names, but you've been very supportive. Specifically, I know the UN to be an organization that traditionally has been assumed to be bureaucratic, but the UNDP Accelerator Lab has been very flexible with us when we've had to pivot. The speed at which we've had to put these pivots together is all testament to your innovation and creativity and desire to move things faster. Lastly, but definitely by no means least, I would like to personally thank the resident representative for Madame Elsie for your passion for young people, your passion for the girl child out there, your passion for wanting to engage not just Muntu Wawansi, but everyone in the whole country. To give us an opportunity to do this, we are forever grateful. And we hope not to let you down, but to make you proud by the time we finish the Youth Ideathon. Thank you, and I'll hand over to Ben, but just for the benefit of anyone who's joining, these thematic sessions will be running for 2 weeks, and the The schedule is available there. Tomorrow, I think we'll be having agriculture, then tourism and the creative industry, and it goes on into next week. More information can be found on our website, which is undp.nase.co.ug. Thank you. Over to you, Ben.
Thank you very much, Dennis, for that very great overview. And I should point out again that that website is probably the most important part of the Ideathon. So I want to encourage you not only to use it, but also to share it, because there might be people who are yet to register their idea and yet are able to do that by simply going to undp.nase.co.ug. And of course, you can share this on WhatsApp through audio connections so that people know exactly how to be able to register for the sessions. Now, as we get started with our discussion for today, just a quick background. Well, you don't even need a background regarding health in Uganda, do you? We know that we have challenges. The COVID-19 pandemic has clearly highlighted that there are things that we could do maybe better with our healthcare system in Uganda. And so the challenges that we then have in terms of what do we do to identify ways in which we can be able to improve the healthcare system in Uganda, one from an entrepreneurial perspective, but especially for young people and the ideas that they have to be able to contribute to that, to adapt, given what we've gone through during the pandemic, but also to try and sort of initiate and provoke that sort of curiosity and identify people who are able to add solutions to this. I'm sure we've probably all seen the story of a young guy, I think he's 24, 25 years old, who found a way of creating oxygen tanks in this pandemic recently. I saw that on the news and I was like, oh, wow, that's absolutely amazing. But for each and every one of those guys, there's another maybe 25 around the country somewhere who have ideas that are just as brilliant, but don't get a chance to put them to the front or get funding for them. And that's what the Ideathon is sort of trying to help bridge the gap as fitting into a bigger ecosystem, as you have heard, of course, with Youth for Business and all the other programs that are going on at the moment. Now, the people on our panel today happen to be very experienced in the sector, and for not only today, but for the rest of the sectors and the panels, we've identified the people who we think have the biggest authority to speak on these different sectors based on their personal experience. As I like to say, they have paid school fees without going through the university or paid school fees after going through the university. And what I'm going to be doing is asking our panelists, they will share their personal experience in terms of their interaction with the health sector. And of course, where they see opportunities, the challenges that they might have faced. And then we'll open up the sessions for a Q&A so you can be able to ask any questions that you might have as we proceed. Let me start first by introducing someone that I respect a lot. If you're ever looking for a role model, I don't think you'll go any further than this guy. He's not so young, and yet I think runs 10 kilometers in about half the time I take. We'll confirm that in a moment. It just goes to show you the sort of tenacity and discipline he has. I admire his discipline and what he does. His CV is so long that if I went through all of it, the entire session would end and we'll have no time to do anything else. But Dr. Ian Clark is no stranger to most of us. We know him very well for his his activity in the healthcare industry. Very briefly, apart from being a founder of Chiwoko Hospital in Luero, which he founded back right after the 1986 war when he came to Uganda, he's the chairman for the Uganda Healthcare Federation. He's a board member for the East Africa Healthcare Federation. He's the chairman of the Clark Group, which has a whole host of businesses and things that they are doing, including a health center in Juba, Clark International University, Clark Junior School here as well. He remains chairman of the International Medical Group as well. And of course, you might know him as having been, I should say, a politician. He's now a failed politician for all the wrong reasons, because Ugandans don't know what's good for them. And I keep saying on the record that I think that the people of Makindi were absolutely unserious not to vote for him the last time that he ran. But I'll let him talk about that in his own right. He also has medical qualifications, having gone to the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, but also Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine and the Queen's University in Belfast way back in 1976. He's called Dr. Busurwa. That's his given Ugandan name. Dr. Ian Clark, good morning to you and thank you for joining us today. If you don't mind, if you don't mind, first of all, by sharing with our young people, how long does it take for you to run 10 kilometers?
It takes me a long time. 10 kilometers on like a good hour and 10, 15 minutes. Yeah. I'm getting slower as I get older, but at least I can still do it. I do run. I run in the mornings.
I can see the shock on Dr. Mtiabule's face. He probably maybe takes an hour and a half or two. But it's amazing. And I think for me, that just sort of points out the sort of discipline that you've exhibited in what you do. So why don't we get into it by you sharing your journey in the healthcare space in Uganda from back in 1988 to where you are now, what that's been like for you in light of where we are as a country at the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Thanks for the introduction. And I'm very flattered. I will try not to speak too fast because I just came back from Ireland recently and people said, now we can't understand you. Now you're speaking too fast. But as you say, I came here a very long time ago before most of our young people, participants here were born. But I want to say one thing that still holds fast today. When I came to the Chiwoko area, the Luwero area, at that time, we didn't have any health facility. And so there was nowhere to treat patients. There was, and I just did it. I just started treating patients under a tree with a tin box of drugs. And then I was joined by well-meaning people, including the Church of Uganda pastor. We, from that we built Chiwoko Hospital. I remember when we went into the forest and carried wood out to build this hospital and brought blocks, cement blocks and bricks and so on and so forth. So it was just something that we did. And I think what I see a lot of in Uganda is we have a lot of good planners, we have a lot of good talkers, we have a lot of people who see the big picture, but we have many fewer people who just get on with the job and just do it. And in some ways, I would say just do it. If you want to make a difference in your community, if you want to get something going, at some point you just got to start and do it. And every enterprise has humble beginnings. So when we wait for conditions to be perfect, it won't happen. One of the things that I do now, to add to my long life, my long career, is farming. And I was lucky. I think I was very fortunate to get a big piece of land down in Fort Portus, actually in Chenjojo. I didn't have squatters, which was great. But that land needed cleared, needed things planted, needed roads put in and so on. And it was a very humble start. We went down there with a tent and some workers who trusted in me to go in such basic conditions. And we started clearing the land and planting coffee. And I noticed today, you mentioned there's a lot of people in the agricultural sector who are coming forward with ideas. I see coffee prices are going up. I just was reading that this morning because of a failure of a harvest in Brazil. And now today we have a lovely farm where I'm going to have agricultural tourism. I'm putting up a guest house so people can come and see, here's a farm in Uganda and something that we can be proud of, our beautiful country, and all the amazing things we can grow, from oranges to coffee to macadamia, all of this stuff. And, and I'm sure, I know that people from outside Uganda will be very interested in this. But it all starts with humble beginnings, just doing something. Now, just to give you a bit of an overview of the health sector, because that's what the main thing is on today. Uganda traditionally, if we go way back, I think it was the missionaries like Albert Cook who built Mengo Hospital and started Old Malago over 100 years ago, who started the formal health sector in Uganda. And then, of course, the government at independence and so on we had the government had New Malago and many the regional referral hospitals. But one of the things, and things were going well at that time, but unfortunately with the advent of Idi Amin and then the civil war, Bodhi won, and then then things kind of fell apart. And there were certainly some of these older consultants who've now died, who really held things together in very difficult circumstances. But what we have today is we have the government sector, the Ministry of Health, and then we have the non-state sector, and let's call, and that's divided into two. You have the non-profits hospitals, which are the mission hospitals like the one I formed in Chioko, and then the commercial private hospitals like International Hospital, and now there's quite a number, especially clustered in the urban centres. And the reason that they're clustered in the urban centres is that these hospitals are expensive. They're expensive to run, and they're expensive to pay staff and so on. And so you find them mostly in Kampala and some other of the urban centres. So what you find today in terms of the health space is the Ministry of Health, it gets its budget, it has its health centres from Health Centre 2, 3, 4, and its district hospitals and regional hospitals. And then it also regulates policy. It does things like, for example, in this epidemic, it obviously is the one that mobilizes, collaborates with international organizations. And when there's other programs such as vaccination programs, distribution of bed nets, health education, health promotion, that all falls under the mandate of the Ministry of Health. And what I would say, and this is where opportunities arise, the Ministry of Health is quite good at analysing the problem, organising the response. If we take Ebola, Marburg, and some of those very dangerous contagious disease epidemics, they've been excellent in terms of how they have managed them. And in fact, they've even gone to other countries and trained other people. And so when it came to the response to COVID, again, the Ministry of Health with its development partners jumped in and were very good, in terms of the response tracking and tracing those who had infection, isolating them, making people quarantine. And in many ways, that's why we had a very slow start to the epidemic here and really very little in the way of infection. But unfortunately, if we come up to today, recently, we've had this second surge. And the second surge has been almost 100%, I believe, due to the Delta variant, which was introduced from India. The Delta variant is both more transmissible and gives a higher, gives more morbidity, worse disease as such. Now, sadly, before Delta came along, we had about 1 million doses of vaccine. And this is a point I'll just make these points as I go along. But because of the adverse social media, the rumors that went around, this thing is Bill Gates is going to introduce microscopic robots into your bloodstream and control you all. You're all going to die after 2 years if you get. And then also because with the AstraZeneca vaccine, there was concerns raised in Europe that it could have some side effects of blood clotting. Ugandans, all of these messages, these negative messages were multiplied in Uganda. They were amplified and multiplied and spread much faster than the good news that we had some vaccines. And so you find that these vaccines were sent out to all the districts and in fact not used. And when the Ministry of Health realized they were going to expire, they recalled them. And recalled them to Kampala and they started to be used. And we first of all said, let's prioritize our health workers, which was a very right decision because the health workers are more exposed to dose-related infections. So if they were treating a lot of people who had, and those people were coughing on them, they were a very high chance of actually getting COVID. But even the health workers were subject to these negative messages. And I have to say, as a result, quite a number of health workers who have died because they didn't take the opportunity to vaccinate, or because they vaccinated a bit late and then they got the infection before they were fully immune. It's not to say, by the way, that someone who's vaccinated can't get COVID. They can. but the chances of them dying from it, even from being hospitalized from it, are vastly reduced. And so it's not that I can't get COVID and even get sick, but I know my chances of death are very reduced since I've been fully vaccinated. So one of the areas that I really think that we need to look at in terms of an opportunity to both make a difference to this country and probably even earn something, make a business out of it, is actually to get the positive health messages across. Because there's no doubt, as the scientific evidence is accumulated, it's accumulating day by day, and don't forget this epidemic is only going for the last 15 to 18 months. So the evidence we have is based on that period. But as we gather the evidence, we know how effective vaccines are or are not, where the failures are. But we also know what happens with the Delta variant and the surges and how transmissible it is and so on. And we need to get the scientifically based evidence out there. We need to find ways, and there's so many social media platforms, there's so many ways, so many WhatsApp groups. We need to get ways of getting, and I think this is a failure of the Ministry of Health, by the way. We need to get those messages out loud to say, look, the scientific evidence is you need to get vaccinated. Now, of course, when we're saying that, now we have the problem that now when we want to get vaccinated, we have no vaccines. And this is a problem for both the Ministry of Health and for government. And I think that now this is not to do with entrepreneurialism, but we as the public need to be rising up and saying loudly to our members of parliament, we need vaccines. Whatever you do, you need to bring vaccines into this country. And so we as the people, if we're sitting there and saying, oh, well, we're not sure about vaccines, then there's no pressure on government. But the only solution to this epidemic, this pandemic, is vaccination. And Britain has now vaccinated 35 million people or something like that. We've vaccinated, I'm not sure the figures, but not around a million, around a million something. So we have a population of 42 million. We need to vaccinate about 20 million. We've done about 1 million. So this is where we stand today. Now, I want to go on and say from that while the Ministry of Health I think they've done their best in many ways in terms of the tracking and tracing, trying to contain the epidemic, but it's got ahead of them. Then we've arrived at this situation where we have people who need oxygen, who need intensive care treatment. And so the private sector has often people can't get the treatment in the government sector. And so they come into the private sector. And as I said, the private sector tends to be expensive. But there's one thing that when you look at the private sector and even the government sector, but the private sector is more agile, shall I say. There are opportunities in medicine in Uganda where this whole issue of digitization can help us to leapfrog over all the obstacles that we have in providing care. We have a big rural population, 42 million people, 80% at least live in upcountry areas. It's been the case that if you needed to reach that rural population, you needed a four-wheel drive vehicle, you needed a doctor, you needed a nurse, you needed all these health professionals. But with digital technology and smartphones nowadays, it's so easy to provide solutions that can be then given to the nurse or given to the health worker and to make them more relevant in their own communities. Let's see if I can think of any examples. But they're coming. These solutions are coming daily. For example, now there are algorithms whereby if a nurse or a health worker is with a patient in the village, she can type in what the symptoms are, and then she can be advised as to what to do. There's technologies now that can take pictures, that can go back to the specialist, and they can get this help. This is digitization of healthcare, will help rural economies and third world countries to catch up in the same way that mobile phones jumped over landlines then the smartphone digitization in healthcare will help us to jump over many things. A young Ugandan guy developed a probe which could measure contractions in a pregnant woman, which could be attached to a smartphone. And in fact, I'm not sure how far he got with his patenting that, or whether some of the big companies jumped in and took it, but it was a Ugandan who did that. The other thing that where we can bring more democratization, more equality in healthcare is by digital solutions for financing. There's a young man called Crispinus, and you mentioned the girls, how often they're involved in entrepreneurial startups. And I happen to be on the board of this startup. A young man called Crispinus, a young lady called Sharon, both Ugandans, have come up with a method of payment, a platform for payment for healthcare. Not only have they come up with that payment mechanism, but people can save. And when they save, they can even be paid some interest. And they can even borrow money on this platform. And it's, as we speak, it's being developed, it's been taken up by MTN, it's got, again, I think it has the approval from Bank of Uganda. It's moving forward, it'll be in the public. I think they've already sensitized many healthcare providers and so on. And the whole idea is this, that often if people need to go to the health center, they don't have the money. So they need to go to hospital, they've got some money, but they don't have all the money. And this app would allow them to save some money, but also if the bill is, say, 200,000 and they've only saved 100,000, that it will allow them to borrow against their record of mobile money and so on. And so these kind of solutions, we have them in lighting technology. You know, we have them in solar lighting, where people pay as you go. They can pay a small amount and then so I think we need to come up with these kind of solutions for people to be able to pay for their healthcare as well, because obviously a big issue for Uganda is poverty, and is the fact that they can't pay for everything. So I think that several things I want to highlight. I want to highlight we need to get together. We need to get an army together to promote the positive health messages, the things we need to be doing to get through this epidemic. Not only the SOPs, not only social distancing and wearing masks and washing hands and following those guidelines, but getting people to realize the importance of vaccination and realize that these vaccines don't kill them, that there aren't these terrible side effects, and that they protect them. And if they don't protect them 100%, at least in the case of even AstraZeneca, the figures that we're getting at the moment are that you're 90% protected from serious illness that will require hospitalization. Now, I think that's pretty good protection. And it's one of the lower ones, that the Pfizer and these other ones protect even better. So we need to find some way to get these health promotion messages out. And we need to leverage the digital technology that exists. I mean, it exists for data, digital records and all that kind of thing as well. I want to mention a program. One of my businesses is a university called Clark International University, just to not very imaginative name, but it has a lot of health science in it. And one of the programs we have there is a program called Refactory. And Refactory is a collaboration with an aid agency called NORAD and a commercial company called Laboramus and Clark International University. And Laboramus, which is has got international links certainly, was finding that university graduates who had IT training in Uganda still didn't have the skills in coding, programming, and these necessary, very technical skills to sell their skills on the international market. And yet international markets are looking for programmers, they're looking for coders. I know that in Ireland, it's very expensive to find a coder because you've got these big companies like Microsoft and Google and stuff there, Facebook and so on there. So they often go to Eastern Europe. And I spoke to a friend of mine about this. I said, why not come south, come to Africa? But the problem was that we as Ugandans were not producing IT graduates that are of significant, high enough quality to compete with Eastern Europeans or the Irish. So this program, Refactory, gives a kind of, I wouldn't say it's an upgrading course. Do you want to stop me, Ben? Feel free.
Almost in a few minutes, Doctor, in a few moments.
Okay, I'm about to finish actually. It gives an upgrading course so that these guys improve their coding skills, their programming skills, and then they can sell those skills internationally. And they just do it through the internet. It's very easy to do. Or they can sell them locally in designing really good websites and so on. I've a group of them now doing something for me on the farm. But this is young people. These are young Ugandans, and I know some of them, and they're equal to any international any person from another country. Don't let anyone, by the way, and I'm saying this from long experience and from comparison of different nations, don't let anybody downgrade Ugandans and Ugandan skills. Don't downgrade yourselves. Have confidence in yourself, but one of the things we sometimes lack is just hard work. Just as I started off the talk by saying, the ability to just get on with it and do it and really push yourself. So those are some thoughts I have in the health sector. There's many other people that will give you other perspectives on it. You know, I wish you good deliberations on this for this ideation conference. Thanks very much, Ben. I'll shut up.
Thank you very much, Dr. Clark. Those are very good thoughts and great insight as well. Again, I think the most important thing for everyone to note, especially for our panelists, is that the majority of the people in this ideathon are very young. And so what might seem very basic to you is stuff that will be a treasure trove for them in terms of insight, in terms of inspiration, in terms of pushing them to go where they need to go. And we'll be hearing from some of them, of course. Later on, we'll have a chance for you to ask any questions that you might have. And you can actually do that in the Q&A in the chat. Feel free to go and type any questions you might have, and then we'll pass those on to our panel later on. Let's pivot very quickly to another one of our panelists and get his thoughts. Our next panelist is a detoother, quite literally. He's in the business of removing people's teeth, and he's made a living out of it, but he's done it with distinction. He's a distinguished dental surgeon. He's got a proper track record in all aspects of dentistry, whichever you think about it, and has been working on delivering dental solutions that bring their vision to life in a compelling way, as if there's any compelling way to remove your teeth. I only introduce him because I fear that next time I go to Pan Dental, he might be the one working on me. And I shudder, as many of us do, at the sight of being in the dentist's chair. But Dr. Tio Mutavile, who is the CEO at Pan Dental, it's good to see you. First of all, next time I come to Pan Dental, please be gentle. I hope I've introduced you well enough. Yeah, not to remove the anesthetic. Yeah. If you could kindly just share your journey as well, because I mean, growing up, I think at some point my mom had to use pliers to remove my teeth. That's how basic the dental space was in Uganda. We've come quite a distance from that, haven't we? If you don't mind sharing some insights on what that has been like, but also again in the context of our young people who might be interested in the health space, what sort of spaces are there for them to innovate and share that might be able to help us, you know, change the space even further? Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you. Dear participants, it's a great privilege and an honor to make my presentation today. My thoughts go back to when I was a youth, when I just come out of university. If you don't mind, let me try and share my screen. There's just one picture I want to bring on first. Is that there now?
Might still need to share the screen again. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I'm really looking forward to this picture. Sorry, Ben, for it.
Me too. I'm looking forward to seeing this picture.
Oh dear. Let me try and see how I can. Oh, there we go. Is it there now?
Yeah.
Now we see it. Yes, now we see it.
Oh, very good. Okay. Yeah, I was saying right out of school, I didn't have money, I didn't have resources, and it was a very tough time. If the youth think times are tough now, They were even tougher then. And so out of school with just a few tools in my box, I had to design and find a way of earning a living. And so I got a carpenter and I designed this wooden dental chair myself. And it was like the modern day dental chairs. It had upholstery, you can see, nice leather. And this point has a hinge. So this part could be tilted downwards with a peg. This was the instrument tray, which I could rotate. There was a funnel here where people could spit inside here, and a little fan and a light at the top. And of course, the instruments were kept in the bottom. That was 1991. And that chair made quite a bit of money. And I eventually sold it. I should have kept it probably, but I sold it to get even a electronic chair, still in service somewhere in Kono. What is the message about all this to the youth? I'll say, don't wait to get the resources to get started. Do start with whatever you have at your disposal. Do start with whatever you can do and try and innovate whichever way you can. Now, over the years, I've been fortunate, I've been lucky, but I've also worked hard. We've ended up growing to be a very large dental practice. We are spread over 3 branches, 2 in Kampala, 1 in Jinja, and another one opening up in another area, hopefully early next year. We have over 20 of these dental chairs. We have several dentists working with us. We have diversified as well into other areas related to dentistry, bringing in technologies that can support our work. If there's any message I can say to the youth today, of course, number 1, skilling does not end. Don't get into a comfort zone and say today, I've finished my degree, I'm there. The degree is just the beginning. Or if you just finished your master's and you get comfortable, skilling never ends. That's number 1. Number 2, technology is going to come in to change the way we work, the way we deliver products. A few years ago, we had BlackBerry. It's no more. We have the iPhone. But I'm sure the iPhone guys, this is one of the things I've found to be very interesting about the Americans. They always are innovating. And I think that's one of the reasons why America as a country is one of the leading superpowers, because they do not sleep. They do not get into a comfort zone and say they've arrived. Of course, this has been possible with the help of the team that I work with. But as the leader of the institution, you set the tone, you set the pace. And it's very important to set the right pace. 2, to encourage everybody to grow with you. Very, very important to understand that once you get started on a journey, there will be other people with you. Of course, some will come on and some will drop off, but it's very important for one to grow with the team. As long as they are with you, try and carry them to the next phase. Encourage them, let them innovate, let them give whatever ideas they can. And for us, innovations in technology, in dentistry in particular, have been very, very instrumental in our growth. We were the first to bring in 3D X-ray imaging in the region. We are the first ones to bring in all sorts of technologies, 3D printing in dentistry. And we serve, as a result, we serve dentists not only in Uganda, some in Kenya, some in Tanzania, who outsource some of their services from us. So look for ways and means of growing with technology. It will be very, very helpful. In a country with very few resources, it's very, very important to maximize the resources that you have. 2, it's very important to have a discipline. When you're disciplined and have records, you can use those records to grow yourself. How? Institutions are always looking at ways they can make people grow. I always tell people, and I tell my staff, that you can never grow on your own from the resources that you make. You will need some bit of financing. Even as an institution, I give them an example and say, look, I do have to engage the banks to make sure they finance us so that we can grow. And I encourage my staff to grow in their own personal ways. get a loan to buy a piece of land, get a loan to start building your house, get a loan to grow, because when you grow, the institution you work with also grows. When the institution grows, you grow, because things move in tandem, and you need to have both the institution and the people in the institution to grow. Basically, that's my message to the youth. There are many, many, many areas of opportunities in the health sector. In dentistry, for example, we are still very, very few dentists. You have 32 teeth. When we are adults, we get about 32 teeth, and they all need to be cared for. So if you multiply the population of Uganda and you assume about 50% are adults, for instance, and they have 32 teeth, there's that many teeth to take care of. As long as we are eating, we need a dentist to look after the teeth. There are less than 500 dentists in the country. The ones practicing are about 300 in the whole country. Although we've been lucky as a country until the recent years, the caries, that is the problem of cavities and holes in the mouth, has not been as prevalent as it is in Europe or other countries because of sugar intake and sugar diets. The numbers of dental care service providers that are going to be needed are high. And as the country grows and develops, as we get more resources in our pockets, as the economy keeps improving, the needs and wants of the people keep changing. When I finished dental school, there were about 3-4 procedures that we used to do. Just removing teeth, cleaning teeth, maybe filling teeth. Those were the main ones. But now we find we have patients coming with very unique needs. They want a better smile, they want whiter teeth, they want it faster, and technology has helped us to grow to make sure that we can deliver a good service in a shorter time. In the past, some of the procedures used to take me 2-3 hours to do. Now in 15 minutes, I can get done. It means I can work faster and deliver a more convenient, more comfortable service, because clients, when you're in their inner space, when you're in somebody's mouth, you want to be in and out in the shortest time. For a procedure which used to take me 1.5 hours, some of the patients, when they come now and they see how short it can be, they are really wowed. And of course, it helps the income of the institution that you see you do more difficult procedures in a shorter time, and so the patients are happier. So technology is something we cannot ignore. You ignore it at your own peril. And for us, it has been very instrumental. And I encourage the youth to look at technology. There are basic skills. For instance, in Ginger, we do offer basic training for the people around at our clinic, just basic IT skills, computer skills, because as long as the world is going digital, computer skills, or at least some form of it, will be necessary. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tom. First of all, can I say that while it was brilliant and innovation from you, that chair, I feel sorry for the poor souls who had to endure 3 hours of teeth removal. Just the thought of being in a dentist chair for more than 2 hours just makes me thank God that we now have innovation that has shortened that quite a bit. Just for context, Dr. Tom, the stats that you shared, I've crunched the numbers, and based on what you said about the 32 teeth for assuming maybe about 21 million Ugandan adults, comes in at about 640 million teeth that need to be taken care of. If you break it down further to the number of dentists that you've talked about that are practicing, you've got 1 dentist per 70,000 Ugandans. But also don't forget that our population is growing. So you're going to have a lot more adults in the few years to come. So that seems like a huge opportunity for training, not only for dentists, but also importantly for the innovation from the sort of things that you are doing, which brings me to our next speaker. And as we introduce her, I would like to encourage those of you who are joining us on the call, wherever you might be, that you don't have to wait for the Q&A session to ask your question. I see Dr. Clark is already doing an amazing job responding to questions that have been put to him in the chat room. So if you've got a specific question about anything that has been shared by any of our panelists, please feel free to simply go into the chat room and ask your question and direct it at any of the panelists. You can of course leave it in the general area, but simply say that your question is for a particular person, and then they will be able to respond to that for the benefit of all of us. I also need to remind you that you're not only limited to attending the session to which you applied, okay? I think someone asked about that. Again, you never know where the ideas are going to come from. I've had Dr. Ian and Dr. Tom, for example, talk about the need for financing. So you might be in the finance space and you needed to be in here to know that there's an opportunity to be able to go and make some money by creating opportunities through innovation in the medical equipment space. Which brings me to our next panelist, who is not only an amazing person, but also very well qualified and extremely talented. Philippa Ngaju Makowere has so many degrees, they scare you. But she's also studied some very complicated things. You know, in Uganda, we usually have this thing that when someone has gone to school and studied complicated things, you pay them a lot more respect. So Philippa has done electrical engineering from the University of Alberta in Canada. She has a master's in interdisciplinary engineering, specializing specifically in biomedical engineering. I assume that means, Philippa, that if your husband ever messed up, you're able to create something that can kill him very quietly in the most painful ways possible. So I couldn't help but think about that. So that guy had better take good care of you. But most importantly, in light of what Dr. Tom was sharing, I think it's a perfect intro for you, because if you look at Dr. Tom's chair and what he did and what you're doing, because you've been dealing mostly in terms of designing electrical devices for healthcare, but more specifically that are appropriate for the local setting. At the moment in Uganda, the average Ugandan, Omuntu Awansi, as Dennis was calling him, might not be able to go to Pan Dental at the moment because of the way our economic society is structured. But you're working on things where we can be able to try and innovate and create things that will make that cost cheaper, not only for Dr. Tom to buy cheaper equipment and expand Pan Dental, but also for the young people who are on the call to be able to find ways of getting into that space and provide that solution at a lower cost that helps improve the healthcare. So if you don't mind sharing your thoughts on what you've been doing so far, what you have seen, and what opportunities that you think there are for our ideators to pick up on going forward. Over to you, Philippa. Welcome.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Ben. It's a pleasure to be here today and to speak to all of you. As he has already introduced me, I'm Philippa Ngaju Makowere. I work with the Uganda Industrial Research Institute, and what we do is we design non-invasive medical devices. So we're looking at improving the status quo of healthcare in Uganda and other similar low resource settings. So in terms of my journey, I actually started in telecommunications, as ironic as that is. And then I quickly realized that that was not the area that I was interested in. So I resigned. I initially worked with MTN, then I went to Uganda Industrial Research Institute. I met a couple of people there and discussed some of the ideas that I had, especially in terms of small power electronics and control systems. And that's pretty much where my journey started. So I wrote this concept paper about how I envisioned the instrumentation division to be. So that's the particular unit that I set up. And we were looking at initially maintaining equipment and then also doing some reverse engineering. But I really sat down and thought that we needed to do a lot more. We needed to have tailored solutions for our particular context. And we eventually ventured into the healthcare sector and went into the hospitals, trying to understand where the pain points were, trying to uncover some of those clinical needs. So we started off at the Mulago workshop, the hospital workshop, And we quickly realized that it would be a nightmare to start there. It was literally a graveyard of beds that were not used. We had autoclaves lying around, infusion pumps, and we had no idea when they had broken down what the problem was. There were challenges with bringing in spare parts. So the hospital engineers at Mulago were extremely overwhelmed by that. And we were too, trying to also discover where we could start. We eventually decided that it was better to go into the wards and talk to the clinicians, understand where their pain, which is the challenge with administering intravenous fluids. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the drip system, for those of you who don't have very clinical backgrounds, but the delivery of fluids, it could be medication, it could be saline solution for rehydration of a patient, but that has to be very carefully controlled to avoid any further clinical health issues. So we decided to start there. We collected several needs, but that particular need really stood out for us. So it was the highest in terms of priority, and we started innovating around that. So we're looking at how could we detect the drop rate? How could we look at regulating it evenly? And then also understanding the context with which that particular device would be used. So we're looking at issues to do with power supply. Can this device actually be sustained? If there's a power outage, if there's a very high turnover of health workers, which is quite common in our hospitals. So we looked at several different design constraints that are very unique to our setting. And we designed a device that we call the electronically controlled gravity feed infusion set. It's such a mouthful, and we are going to come up with a much better name, but we abbreviated to the ECGF infusion set. And what it does is it detects the drop rate, it regulates the drop rate as well, and it has a host of safety features that are very applicable for our particular setting. So maybe just to understand the problem better, right now, intravenous therapy is manually controlled. So it requires a clinician to set the flow rate and monitor it for the entire therapy. So if you think about it, we've already been talking about the ratios of dentists to patients. So if you look at doctors to patients, nurses to patients, it's not very different. For every patient you have, for every nurse you have about 11,000 patients. So the situation is quite similar. So we were looking at the risk involved in the manual regulation. There's a constant deviation in the flow rate. You do not have any feedback on whether the flow rate has actually been set correctly. You don't have feedback on any potential adverse events that could happen to the patient. So issues to do with, let's say, a very fast flow rate or a slow flow rate, or if there's a bubble in the tube. So all those issues, you have no idea. So we wanted to provide a solution for that, and we wanted to automate that process. So we wanted to relieve the clinicians of that burden and fully control the entire therapy. And I'm just going to share a picture here of what the infusion set looks like. So as the picture is coming up, I'll just continue talking. So one thing that is very important for us to understand is when we're establishing clinical needs, we need to tailor our innovations to our particular context. And I think there are a lot of youth who are coming up with excellent ideas, but some of them may not be well tailored for our particular setting. And I think we need to be careful and make sure that we're addressing that. And then also we need to think about affordability. We need to think about how this device can actually be translated into our context, Can it be rolled out in the public hospitals, in the private hospitals? So we need to think about how we can manufacture it and also scale it in our particular context. I'll expand on that a little bit. So some of the biggest challenges we've had were access to equipment for fabrication, establishing a reliable supply chain, especially in the healthcare sector, where you have to have very high quality components, so electronic components, it could be mechanical. You need to make sure that those are very carefully controlled. So I don't seem to be seeing this picture. Let's see if I can get it. I think I'll try and share it later. So some of the challenges, as I had mentioned, some of the challenges that we had were so issues to do with equipment for fabrication, the cost of procuring that equipment, then also accessing services for intellectual property. That is a very big gap. So patent lawyers seem to be very scarce, and they also don't seem to have the appropriate background to fully understand the technology so that they can draft strong claims which we could file. So unfortunately, for us, we actually had to get a patent lawyer from Europe in order to meet our needs, our intellectual property needs. So I think that's a very big gap that we need to be addressed. And then also in terms of improving the pathways to commercialization, definitely there needs to be a reliable supply chain. As I had mentioned earlier, we've had to import a lot of our electronic equipment, also the consumables, the materials. So we use a lot of additive manufacturing technologies such as 3D printing. I'm sure some of the youth are very familiar with 3D printing. We used a lot of those techniques for our research. But if you think about the actual commercialization of devices, we need to be thinking about injection molding and laser printers and mass scale kind of metal fabrication, which is still a growing area. And Uganda Industrial Research Institute has set up more or less a park in Namambe. There's a facility there that is going to pilot the production of electronics and mechanical outputs. So definitely the efforts are there, but there's still a big need for us to continue to work on those particular areas. Another thing is, in our particular area, we don't have a lot of venture capitalists and angel investors. So investment in this particular region, especially in the medical equipment sector, is considered very high risk, because if you think about it, the biggest markets for medical devices are Europe, the US, Japan. Africa actually composes about less than 2% of the medical device market. So it's also important for innovators to think of diversified product lines that could actually serve multiple contexts. So you could possibly have maybe a slimmer version, fewer features for a low resource setting, and then you'd have maybe a heavier featured device for a high resource setting. In terms of the initiatives out there for the youth that I've been working on, we have a lot of projects in terms of innovation in biomedical engineering education. One in particular is UBORA, UBORA. So you can go to the website, there's ubora-biomedical.org. And what it is it's an open source e-platform for the co-creation of medical devices. So it's open to developers, clinicians, students, engineers, industrial designers, you name it, anyone who can play a significant role in terms of developing medical devices. It's underpinned by European medical device standards, which means it has several work packages and modules that help you create a device that would meet regulatory standards. And this particular effort has been supported by several European academic institutions, including African institutions, URI in particular, as well as Kenyatta University in Kenya. So it's a great tool for students to actually learn the ropes of actually developing an open source device. Another effort has been through the African Biomedical Engineering Consortium, ABEC. Programs have been run on design schools, as well as looking at capacity building of biomedical engineering through education, so master's programs as well as PhD programs, and that's through the African Biomedical Engineering Mobility Program. So we have several lecturers at more established schools that are supporting that effort as visiting professors at institutions that may not have the capacity. So in a nutshell, that's my brief intro. I don't know if I can get this. I'll probably maybe send the device so that it can be shared later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philippa. There's a saying in my language that your school fees was not wasted. Thank you so much. As you can imagine, there's like a million questions coming through. One of the things that for me usually helps me gauge the success of an activity like this is the sort of questions that come through when we're having this sort of discussions. And looking at the questions that are being shared at the moment, I am extremely encouraged that we are onto something here, that Nase and the UNDP and partners are onto something here, because there's obviously already a lot of provocation of ideas coming from every angle now. Even I, who is not really that much of an entrepreneur, are beginning to think of things to do. And we'll be coming to the Q&A in just a little bit, but I can just pick one question that I saw from Donozio. And he was asking you, Dr. Tom, about how you handle a frightened and cooperative or stressed patient in your dental clinic. And the moment I saw that question, I thought, that is about 95% of dental patients, maybe. And so maybe there's some sort of opportunity to do some post-dental counseling or set up a small business outside the pan dental where people can go and relax and chill after their teeth have been removed. I don't know. There's definitely something along those lines. But we'll come to you in a bit and have you shed some light on that. We want to hear from two more people very quickly before we then open up the session for Q&A. As you can imagine, it's shocking how quickly the time goes by. We already are at 10:20, and I'm just shocked. I'm like, oh my goodness, what's going on with that? I want to go to Dr. Frank Mugabe at the Ministry of Health and just sort of get some insight from him from the government perspective, if you want to call it that, because of everything that you're hearing to do with healthcare. Naturally, you expect the government to be a very big player, but it also goes beyond that because of how they're able to support young people with the ideas that they come up with and the things that they want to do and how they fit into the bigger picture. We've heard from Philippa, we've heard from Dr. Ian Clark, we've heard from Dr. Tom in terms of the things that need to be done. How would these sort of things fit into the bigger public health space? How can they be empowered? How can they be helped? And to try and sort of get some insight from that perspective is Dr. Frank Mugabe, who is a Principal Medical Officer. He currently leads the technical unit at the Department of the Non-Communicable Disease Department in the Ministry of Health. He's got more than 2 decades of experience in the healthcare space. And so, Frank, if you're there, I'm trying to find you. If I can hand over to you for a little bit, and then we'll hear from Ida at the UN to try and tell us a little bit about what the UN has been trying to do to get into this space to bring it all together. And then we'll have a quick Q&A session before we then let you continue to interact. Philippa, if you don't mind sharing the websites you talked about, I think some people are asking about those. You could put those in the chat room and we can go with us. Yes, there you are, Dr. Frank. I was looking for you. Good to see you. Good morning. You've probably had some of the brilliant ideas coming through from our panelists here, and I'm sure that you will be encouraged to know that the future is quite bright based on the things that you're hearing. If you don't mind sharing your insights for a few minutes on what you see and what you think we can be able to do to take advantage, especially for the benefit of our young people. Over to you, Doctor. I think you need to unmute yourself, Dr. Frank. We can't hear you yet. I see you're still muted.
Thank you very much for this program. And I want to thank and appreciate all the attendees and all the questions. I want to appreciate all the panelists for the responses they have given. Of course, as a Minister of Health, in this era of COVID-19, I must say that we have faced an unprecedented challenge, and we have realized that our health system needs much more than we had expected. Needless to say that we have a funding challenge, we have an infrastructure challenge, we have a challenge in the supplies, we have a challenge in the surveillance, we have challenges in the reaching everywhere, we have a human resource challenge, and we have challenges. Whatever I'm calling challenges, I look at them as opportunities for the youth. And we look at the youth as a fulcrum for development, as a fulcrum for health development. Talking about the issues of health consumables, coming to the masks, coming to the sanitizers, coming to health gowns, coming to everything, coming to water and sanitation, all of these are areas that have faced a lot of demand that we had not expected. We find that issues of health education, health prevention, health promotion is an area that, as of today, wants more attention than anything else. Dr. Ian Clark was very eloquent about talking about the influence of social media and how it has affected some of the programs. And we realize that this is not only for COVID, this is not only now, but all health programs are affected. We are in an era of globalization and an era of a lot of external influences. And our youth, we find they are more targeted because they attend more social media when it comes to most of these things. For starters, in my discipline, for example, the issue of healthy diet, because of globalization and because of the changing influences, we find that the youth have fallen as victims of poor diet. And because they are young, they tend to think that they cannot get some of the conditions like hypertension, diabetes, and others that are killing most of the adults today. This is an area that the youth can think of. How do we influence healthy dieting? Issue of exercises and generally being physically active is also one of the other areas that we can think of. The youth have fallen as victims of alcoholism and tobacco smoking and other substances abuse, which I think is an area that the youth can also champion in campaigning for and helping to stop. Environmental protection. We need a more safer environment than ever before, and there is a lot of opportunities in doing some of these to ensure that we improve our environment. Coming to service delivery, bridging the gap between the rural and the urban areas, we realize that we have a big challenge. First of all, general education, general access to information. The referral system is a problem, and far worse in this, for example, in this lockdown, people being able to move from the villages to the health facilities, people being able to move even for vaccination services, people being able to access information is really a very, very big challenge that the youth should interest themselves in. There are many emerging innovations that we see. I think moving forward, we will be embracing more digital health service provision. I'm sure you must have seen some robots that have been moving around in some modern countries, vaccinating people or checking who has not been vaccinated. We should be thinking more in terms of telemedicine and those kinds of areas. And I want to empower the youth to be the champions of these opportunities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Frank. Very, very insightful to hear from you. One of the things that I picked up from what you said is especially that balance between the rural and the urban, because a lot of people usually focus too much on the urban, but it's obvious that there is a lot of opportunity, especially in the rural setting, in terms of what solutions there can be to improve the health setting there. Just before we go to our Q&A session, I'm just going to hand over to Ida with the UNDP, just to give us some quick insight into what they have been seeing, the programs that are currently going on, and what we can be able to do to make sure that the ideas that we have come to life. Ida Nakanjako is with the UNDP. There you are, Ida. Good to see you. I'll hand over to you for a few moments, and then we will get into our Q&A session. Over to you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everyone who has tuned in. My name is Ida Nakanjako. At the UNDP, we have been working very closely with the Ugandan health system. We have been working with the WHO and, of course, Ministry of Health, although not directly, but directly with WHO, and we have mainly been supporting on really what the national emergency plan has been on COVID. And one of the areas that we have supported, it has been on HR. We have supported human resource, because that is one of the challenges that have been highlighted. Everyone has been hearing that we have a few medical doctors, we have a few nurses, and really ministry started inviting the retired medics to come back and provide a service, because the health system was kind of overstretched. So UNDP came, worked with WHO, and we started supporting the human resource to come back to service. We also, in that, we support surveillance and case management through the support of HR. As you listen to Dr. Frank, surveillance and case management were facing challenges. So UNDP has been supporting that. We have been also supporting a program which we called Energy for Health, where we would provide solar and solar equipment to health facilities that are out of that are up country and really off the grid, because we know that most of the health supplies and commodities need power, need to work on power and all that. So we came in and supported those health facilities. Then the other thing, we supported government, broader government, in providing Zoom licenses. And in that, we were providing an opportunity to the different ministries and agencies and departments to remain in service, even when we are experiencing lockdowns right from March last year to now. We looked at a situation where government needed to stay active and provide services. So we provided the Zoom licenses to equip government. We are also closely looking at and going into issues of digitalizing. We heard about Dr. Ian Clark talking about that. We are looking at that kind of support of digitalizing, especially innovations from the young people. We are looking at issues of telehealth. Dr. Frank mentioned it. Because in such cases where you need to decongest health facilities, we need people to still access health services. Even when COVID has come in a big way, we need to think of the broader health system. Issues of NCDs, issues of health, issues of sexual and reproductive health, especially for you young people, you need to closely monitor those. I was recently reading a report, and it was on sexual and reproductive health. Cases have gone up. Young people are engaging much more than they used to engage, and we are seeing teenage pregnancies. We are seeing STIs increasing among young people. So we need to look, as young people, we need to look at broader health, to have solutions for broader health, so that as government is fighting COVID, everyone is putting their emphasis on COVID. As young people, we do not get left behind. We need to move with everyone on board and looking at everything in a broader way. So really, and before I move on, one of the other things that I need young people to look at and critically is the issue of mental health and drug use. It is, I think, because of the stress from COVID, we are seeing a lot of drug abuse and issues of mental health coming up in a big way. So as young people, can we think of all these challenges and provide solutions? I'm glad this space has been created for you young people specifically. You're not going to compete with the much older people like us, but think about the challenges that the health system is facing, as broken down by Dr. Frank, and try to provide some bit of solutions and present them. Recently, I'm seeing a lot of grants being put online, and these grants are for mainly COVID, but they can be tilted to so many other areas. For example, talk of COVID and issues of mental health and the stress that has come along with it. If someone has an innovative idea and all that, you can apply and get help somewhere and incubate your idea. So for me, I don't want to look at only only COVID, but I want young people to look at the broader challenges of our health system. That is the only way that young people and their specific areas of concern are going to be solved. We have had youth corners in many of our health facilities, and maybe at village level. Let us use those youth corners and develop ideas, innovative ideas that can be used and broadened and developed by young people for such considerations. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ida. That's wonderful. I need to pick up on the issue you raised at the last point on the issue of mental health. One of those things that in Uganda we either don't want to talk about or refuse to talk about. And I think if the COVID-19 pandemic has taught us anything, is that mental health is actually a really big issue. And I think it probably presents one of the biggest opportunities for someone to innovate and do something around how we handle that at the moment. And I said that as someone who has had mental health issues in the past. So, and it was difficult, like, who do you talk to? Where do you go? Even in the hospitals, it's not something that you sort of have a ready solution for because of all the stigma surrounding that. So brilliant. We're going to do a quick Q&A session. And so for all the panelists, I'm going to try and go through some of the questions, and I will ask you to please take note of the questions that are being directed at you. And of course, someone is asking if the recording is going to be available. Yes, as I said at the beginning, in case you hadn't joined us yet, the most important resource for the Youth Ideathon is our website, undp.nase.co.ug. All the material that you're seeing here, everything that you're hearing, we're going to upload all this stuff on the website. So you can go and pick that up and regurgitate on it and go through that. But also very importantly, like I said, the reason why you want to be able to engage in all the different sessions is because there's so many intersections that tie into each other. And a very good example of this is from you, Charles Lwanga, and I'll start with that. You're talking about the biggest cause of health problems being food, but also the solution. And you're talking about how there's a space to do innovation around food, that would then sort of talk into agriculture and how that's processed, how you, at the moment, we all know about COVIDX and what's happened with that, which then ties into the other side. So it's important that you want to attend as many of the sessions as you can, if not all of them, but also share the links with other people. And of course, you can do that by getting that from the website, and we'll be sharing them as well with you. Right, here to the Q&A. I'm going to run through the questions and I'll try and direct them to specific panelists. If I leave any general and you think you can answer that for our panelists, please do pick that up. Yes, Jonathan, we'll try, and because we have your email addresses, we will share the links also to the email addresses. Gerald, you're asking about navigating the dynamics of starting up a healthcare business, from licensing, taxation, and things like that. That's what Nase is here to do. So you will definitely be able to get a lot of that information. Dr. Tom, someone, Daniel, is asking about your journey into getting funding, right? So I'm going to go through all the questions and then I'll come to each of you and you can answer all the questions that have been directed to you. And so someone is asking if you can give us some insight about when you were starting in 91, you were from school. Is assuming that you probably didn't have enough money at the time to get started. While you did try to innovate, you must have needed some money to put together that contraption of yours that saved a lot of pain for people at the time. Can you give us some insight into how you managed to navigate that? That's one of the questions coming to you. Philippa, someone is asking, are there any opportunities to be able to work on reducing substandard equipment in dental facilities? Because that seems to be quite an issue. But also, does URI have any provision sort of for capacity building for someone who might be interested in biomedical engineering in that field? Someone is coming also asking, this is Judith, and talking about technology being mostly expensive, but also saying, what do we do about reducing the cost of the things that we're producing? Dr. Ian, this one is for you. In your own experience, and this is something that I think that's touched on, in your experience as a medical practitioner, having come to Uganda at the crux of just after the war, how do you assess the role of mental health on the spread of the COVID-19? But also, I guess, how do we deal with that? Charles is also saying about the mental health still. What sort of opportunities could there be around that? Emmanuel, you're asking about a site where coders are trained to meet international standards. I think Dr. Ian Clark mentioned that they've been doing something about that, so I'll ask him to touch on that a little bit. I know that, I think that's the project you're doing with Michael Nitejeka, the refactory, I think that is, yes. So just if you just Google refactory, you'll find that very, very easily. Someone here is saying to Dr. Ian as well, especially in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, where the government has been focusing mostly on fighting the COVID-19 pandemic, you still have all these other issues that are still going on regarding maternal healthcare, antenatal, and all of that, cancer and things like this. What do we do to try and help communities? What sort of innovation? I guess every question is sort of asked in that angle. How do you innovate in that sort of space? Also for you, Dr. Ian, Nathan is saying he always reads your articles in the New Vision and enjoys the practical approach that you've taken to get things done. How can we make prevention of diseases in rural areas workable as an entrepreneurial idea? Your thoughts on that as well. And then for you, Dr. Philippa, what technologies and mega trends do you see dominating the world, especially in the post-19 economy? And I guess the rest of the panelists can touch on that. Dr. Tom, this is my question from earlier, which I think is a great opportunity. How do you deal with a frightened and cooperative or stressed patient in the dental clinic? Is that something that could be an opportunity? And finally, for you, Philippa, how possible would it be, for example, to design a wheelchair that can help reduce on pressure sores to people with spinal injuries? I know that sores, for example, are a big problem for people who spend a lot of time in the hospital. This is from Mohammed, who is a public health specialist and is also thinking about doing something in that space, but needs some help from technical hand. How do you help him to do that? I think let's start with you, Dr. Ian. You can deal with the things that have been put to you, and then we'll go to Dr. Tom, and then we can wrap up with Philippa.
Okay, so the first question was about mental health of COVID-19, caused by COVID-19, what we could do about it in communities and so on. Let me take, okay, before I address the mental health, let me just address the psychology of many of us in Uganda. I wrote a newspaper comment about this a couple of weeks ago, and I think that sometimes, I said, when there's a saying that goes, when America sneezes, Europe catches a cold. But I think when America sneezes, Europe may catch a cold and Africa gets pneumonia. And by that, I mean that when there's any rumors or, anything that's negative that goes around on social media coming from America and Europe, it seems to get amplified in Africa. I gave in my newspaper article the example of the contraceptive pill, which is known to have the side effect of causing clotting disorder, and as such was modified. The contraceptive pill has been used in Europe for 60 years, and it was modified to contain very little hormones, so that it reduced this risk of blood clots. But still in Africa, very few people use the contraceptive pill because they'll say, oh, it causes blood clots. And so we're very susceptible. When we hear the least negative thing, it becomes very negative by the time it gets here. And I think that's been the case in COVID as well. And then, of course, all these rumors about, the things that are just they come from what we call anti-vaxxers. So these are people who are against vaccinations at any price. And they put out all kinds of silly rubbish. And yet people still say, is this true? I mean, there was a post that went around that somebody standing authoritatively saying, all people who have been vaccinated with COVID vaccination will be dead within 2 years. And he said it very authoritatively. And man, people were scared. I had quite educated people contacting me and said, is this true? They were really panicking. So, there's something in our psyche here. And I think it's because we're not teaching enough science and we're not scientifically based enough. And so our psychology accepts all this negative stuff. And it really is detrimental to us as individuals in the final analysis. Now, in terms of mental health itself, I'm not a specialist in that, but obviously COVID, by shutting stuff down, has had a big effect, not just in Uganda, but over the whole world in terms of mental health. One of the things that worries me most is our children being out of school for all this length of time. Now, sometimes education is not very good, but it is still something for the kids to do, and they do get some benefit from it. But, I see on my farm, these little kids are all carrying firewood, collecting firewood and taking it back. It's fine, but they're really even forgetting what they've learned, and that's going to affect a generation in the future. And we need to get these kids back into schools again. The fact that we shut the schools down, then we opened for a week or two, and then we shut them down again. Really, we needed to find another solution for this. Then there's someone else asking a very good question about what about, while the emphasis is on COVID, what about the other diseases? Because you've got rural areas where maternal mortality is high, where access to services is simply not there. What can you do about that? What about how can digitization help such places? I think that if I go back to my early days in the late 80s and early 90s in Chiwoko Hospital in Luwero, and it's not very far from Kampala, it's like about 2.5 hours from Kampala. But in those days, it was a no-go area. In the Abodi II regime, it was a place where people didn't go at all. And I went there shortly after that. And, as I said at the beginning of my talk, sometimes you just have to get in the community and just do it. And if you mobilize communities, and instead of just talking and complaining, but you decide to do something positive, what actions can we take here? What can we take in health education? What can we take in public health in terms of our hygiene and and how can we publicize our plight? Then you can get help, but it's when we sit there helplessly saying, "Oh dear, what can we do?" Then, and of course, one recognizes that there are so many of these communities which have so little, and they're not getting the help that they need. and there's no quick answer, but nothing will happen unless someone starts the mobilization. And then someone said about, and this is a very good question, and I haven't really thought it through, but how can you make a campaign of prevention, health promotion and prevention, and positive message about COVID? How can you make that work at a commercial level? Well, it's actually, when I think about it, there are sponsors for such things. There are international companies such as Coca-Cola, such as banks. Even there are Ugandan companies such as UNRWA, New Vision, and various organizations which will get behind such campaigns if they think that you're really doing something positive. My beef at the minute is that COVID has kind of unmasked the cracks in society, so that you get. And so instead of us all rallying together to defeat COVID, you just get people pointing fingers about other people, pointing fingers at government, pointing fingers at this and that, taking up these social media rumors and so on. So if we all move together and say, then I think we can do something. And one way to do it is work together in terms of mobilizing people to fight COVID. It was done with HIV. There was Uganda was one of the best countries in its response to HIV. And even today, I think Uganda, I sat in one of the early meetings where we talked about getting everyone on treatment for HIV, and I thought, this is a pipe dream. But it's there, it's happened, and so many people are on treatment for HIV and on the medications available. So we need to work together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ian. Over to you, Dr. Tom, and then we'll wrap up with Philippa.
I'll start with the interesting one, which is got to do with pain. We all don't love going to the dentist, me inclusive. But I'll tell you, dental care does not start with when you go to the dentist. It starts with when you get your first set of teeth at the age 1. So when you're worried about what is going to happen, the pain, etc., studies have shown if you do a few basic things, and I'll quickly run through them, you should have healthy teeth, at least the majority of them in the mouth. Number 1, brushing before you go to bed. A good number of Ugandans don't. Number 2, of course, brushing in the morning after breakfast is my recommendation, and before going to bed. Secondly, flossing. Flossing is a string which you can use in between the teeth. Most of the problems we get in adulthood and late adulthood is from between the teeth. So cleaning the teeth, you avoid problems. A lot of this is demonstrated on videos on our website, which is www.pandentalsurgery.com. You can click on video links. They'll show you how to take care of your teeth. What do we do to calm down patients? First of all, we cannot calm down an agitated patient. We say, please, let's communicate. Getting hyper, getting worried is not going to help solve the problem of the tooth. And know that you need to do this. It's like the car, when it is 5,000 kilometers, you need to go in, like it or not, take it in, they service it, they open, they may knock around a few things, but it's got to be done. Now, obviously, one has to communicate because you're dealing with a human being. It's not an inanimate object like a car, where you're just knocking and hitting wherever you want. So I tell my patients, if you relax, we have the technology, we have the tools to make dentistry less painful compared to what it was when I had just gotten out of dental school. Just to give you an example of that, most of the time we need to deliver an anesthetic to the patients. And so when we deliver the anesthetic, the way we deliver it is such that we use a small needle. The needle we use now is much, much thinner than the needle I used to use when I got out of dental school. you can actually get the size of needle I use now, and it enters inside the lumen of the needle I used to use when I had just gotten out of dental school. So technology has affected the quality of tools we use. Secondly, there are other chemicals we use to numb the gum, to say, okay, topically, I'm going to put this, it doesn't hurt. It's like a Vaseline. You put it on the gum before the injection. So the gum starts numbing. So by the time you give the injection, it is much less painful. It is very, very important for the patients to communicate with the dentist about their state, to talk about their fear, to talk about their apprehension. When you do and the dentist understands, it becomes much easier for the dentist to try and deal with that in the course of the treatment. So it's not a pill that I can give you. It's not one thing. A lot of it deals with communication and the handling and the mannerisms of the dentist, but also you as the patient coming down and knowing that you will have to do this one or the other. The way to inspire you to deal with a difficult dental visit is to understand that if you don't deal with the problem when it is still small, it's only gonna get worse and more painful. So just brace yourself, relax, and the dentist will do their best. When it comes to funding, there's no bag of money out there. You just have to look at tools and tricks and options that you can apply to your current situation, whatever it is. There's the traditional old-fashioned, if I can call it that, that we used to use. You have a problem, you go to an uncle, you go to a relative, you go to a very wealthy relative or friend or somebody you know, you appeal to them. And of course, what comes into play is your negotiation, your skills. What is it gonna do for you? What is it going to mean for you? Appeal to the human emotion and say, look, I'm just starting. This is very important to me. I need 2 million shillings. I'm gonna start a project and it's gonna help me become more independent, or I can help generate income for myself to take care of mama, or I can pay it back in so much time. That's the easiest soft way to get capital. The other hard way is to find a job and you juggle between the two, between whatever you're innovating and whatever you have to do to earn a living. Like I did, I had to get a job in a government institution. So you have to find ways and means to create the capital. And when you get to a level where you can borrow from the bank, do borrow from the bank, but be disciplined to pay. Be disciplined to pay. That's one of our biggest problems in the country. I've had 12 situations where I get financing from the bank through leasing. Leasing is another way of getting technology or getting equipment. The equipment becomes the security. You don't need extra security. Most banks do that program of leasing. And maybe UNDP can come in to support leasing for the youth so that the youth can find it easy to acquire whatever they need to acquire to innovate, to grow, or to start a business. I found leasing very, very useful. I've leased over 10 times, and that's been one of our major sources of ways to grow. There's so many other questions on education. Makerere is up to the numbers of dentists. When we were trained, we were 10 in our class, only 7 graduated. But now the class which was 10 is 50. Each class is 50. So government is acting on our call to improve on the numbers. There's so many others which I can respond to and you'll put on the website, I suppose, in the interest of time, unless you're giving me more time.
Thanks, Dr. Tom. No, unfortunately, I can't give you more time, not now anyway, but yes, we'll definitely look forward to those answers. And thanks a lot for that insight as well. On the issue of funding, of course, because it's a sticky one, it's one of the reasons why we are doing the Ideathon, because we know that there is a need for people who have ideas to sort of get help when they can't get it anywhere else. And so if the idea is that good, there should be able to be some support. And we thank the United Nations Development Program for supporting ideas like this and initiatives like this to try and help people who have brilliant ideas to be able to bring them to life, not because they are not able to find the support that they need. And so we hope, of course, that this will get even bigger as we look forward to that. Finally, let's hear from you, Philippa, in a few moments to respond to the questions that came to you in as brief time as you possibly can, and then we will wrap up and give some thoughts on where we go from here.
Hello. I'm unable to share my video. I don't know why, but it's refusing me to share my video. But I'll just go straight into the questions. Maybe Ben, you can help me enable my video because it says it's been stopped by the host. Okay, thank you. So I'll start with the first question. There was someone who asked about the intravenous device and also mentioned that it could be extremely useful in this particular pandemic, which is true. So we've completed 3 clinical trials of the device and it has shown safety and efficacy. We did a small study in adults with infectious diseases. We enrolled about 12 patients. And then we did a pediatric study after that, which was a bit larger, where we enrolled about 136 children. So we have evidence of safety and efficacy. Right now, we're trying to get through the regulatory approvals. Unfortunately, we have a few challenges here in Uganda. We don't have well-harmonized regulatory standards when it comes to medical devices that are developed within the country. So we're looking at a CE mark, and we're trying to meet requirements for that particular standard. The next question was about patent lawyers. So I think people seem not to understand the function of patent lawyers. So essentially, they help in filing for intellectual property. So that could be trademarks, copyrights, patents, anything of that sort. For biomedical devices in particular, it's very important that the patent lawyer has a technology background. In Europe, for example, a lot of the patent lawyers are primarily engineers, so they would maybe have a first degree in chemical engineering, and then after that they get into patent law. So they are very well versed with the technology and they're able to draft claims. So this is an activity that cannot be done by the innovator by themselves, and you need this very specialized help. So I hope that clarifies. So in Uganda, we don't seem to have the patent lawyers who have that particular background. So there were several questions about people who have specific innovations, and I think I've responded to those ones so that they can reach out to me individually. There's another question about prototyping space at Uganda Industrial Research Institute. So we do support several startup companies. We help them in terms of, some of them come when they need help with preclinical testing or preparation for clinical validation. We also do a lot of the technology development, especially if they don't have a minimum viable product right as yet. So we do offer a lot of that support. Right now, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we can't have anybody coming into URI, but we still offer this support remotely, so they can definitely please get in touch with me. There was a question about, has URI put in place strategies to curb down the use of substandard equipment in dental facilities? So firstly, just to clarify, this is not URI's mandate. This is the mandate of the Uganda National Bureau of Standards. Yes, it is a bit confusing because we work closely together because we're trying to put out, technology. So we need to ensure that it meets, the market standards. But it's primarily UNBS and also the National Drug Authority, which is in charge of regulating, let's say, for example, pharmaceuticals that are coming into the country or medical devices. So those two entities are the ones that you'd have to go to. There's a second question from the same person. Does URI have a provision for capacity building for the interested biomedical engineering professionals in that specific field? A case in point, the new facility set up at Namambe. So we do offer industrial training of recent graduates, and we also offer support to people who have graduated. There are a few positions that do come vacant. We don't have any right now, but we do offer these structured trainings through industrial training. We also host design schools with support from the African Biomedical Engineering Consortium. So definitely there are opportunities for capacity building through those particular initiatives. So the others were specific to some of the projects and technology support, so I can handle those on an individual basis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philippa. I really intent on finishing on time, but we're about 3 minutes over, and I apologize for that. I'm going to ask Dennis to just come and wrap up for us in about 35 seconds and just sort of give us direction on where we're going after this, not only for this session, but for some of the other sessions. But even as he does that, I have to keep on reminding you of this. UNDP.nase.co.ug. That's the resource. That's where you want to go, because it has information about any questions you might have. It has an opportunity for you to get in touch and ask any more questions that you might want to ask, and then we'll be able to deal with that. But I'll hand over to Dennis now to wrap up for us for this session.
Thank you very much, Ben. Mine is really very simple, to say that I'm very grateful to all the panelists, not just for having shared their views and thoughts, but you've been very actively answering all the Q&A. I think we've got over 74 questions answered. About 24 are still open, and I'm sure we'll stay behind and try and answer them all. So thank you very much for all your time and effort. One of the questions I wanted to answer very briefly, Ben, before I go, is someone asked, what are the next steps? Maybe when we do our session tomorrow, I will take the viewers through the steps. The first phase of this ideathon was about getting ideas, getting young people to actually register their ideas, which we've done now. This week is all about thematic sessions. So we have 2 weeks of thematic sessions covering quite a number of areas. And then the third phase is what we call master classes. So some of you who had slightly more technical questions, those will be addressed in the master classes. We'll have sessions on intellectual property that Philippa was talking about. We'll have sessions around whether your business needs to register or not. So there's slightly going to be a more technical session after the thematic sessions. So mine is really simple, other than to reiterate that everyone should head to our website, which is undp.nase.co.ug. We also live on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and very many other socials. But thank you very much, all our panelists. And Ben, back to you. Thank you very much for moderating the session. Very happy with the job well done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dennis. And I want to say thank you to all our panelists for joining us as well. We appreciate you taking the time to be on the call. As you have heard, so again, undp.nase.co.ug. Don't forget to share with someone that you think might be interested in this, even if it's not necessarily their sector. As you can imagine, the last 2 hours, we've had some really good insight, and some of the stuff gives you ideas on things that you can do. It opens your mind to a lot of things. So please do share the links when you have an opportunity. If you have friends that you think might have ideas that will be useful, help them to register. We're still taking registrations, and of course, then join us for the rest of the sessions and the panel discussions as well. On behalf of NACE, on behalf of the UNDP and the rest of the team, we want to say thank you so much for joining us, and have yourselves a lovely morning. Bye-bye.
Just to mention, Ben, that we're going to stay behind briefly for about 10 minutes to answer some of the questions. So, but thank you very much. Bye-bye, everyone.